See, in America, I don't believe that we have a justice system. We have a punishment system. And that comes straight out of the Bible, straight out of Christian theology. In Christianity, when somebody does something wrong, the answer is punishment. Sin must be paid for. You must experience consequences. And sure, you can be forgiven, but that's only after you get punished and you have to confess and do the repentance and change your life and, all of that. But first, you have to experience pain. And this just creates this worldview where consequences aren't just natural, they are moral, like they're rooted in our moral system. That in order to have a moral system, somebody does something bad, they must immediately be punished, and they have to really be punished so that they don't do that again. And so when you grow up believing that wrongdoing must always be met with suffering, with punishment, then that becomes your instinct for every social problem. Crime needs harsher sentences. People who use drugs need to go to jail, not rehab. Poverty is a personal failure. You're suffering and poor because you made bad choices, not because you were born into them or because something bad happened to you to put you in that position. Homelessness and teen pregnancy, well, that's your own problem. You did that to yourself. So you should be shamed and you should be punished. If someone abandons their country and comes across a border to save themselves and their children, well, you have committed a crime. You've done something bad. And the fact that you were running across the border shows that you obviously did something bad in your life back home. And so you must also be punished, and in the harshest possible way. Even mental illness is something to be shamed, something that you must work to overcome. And if you don't, well, that's your own problem, and your mental illness is dismissed as a non-issue. And it's so funny when people say things like, oh, it's all in your head. And it's all in your head. Your head is your entire self. Your head is literally your existence. It is what controls everything about who you are and what you do and how you behave. And so when people say it's all in your head, they're literally saying it's all in your existence. It's all in the thing that your entire existence is wrapped up in, which is quite literally existential at the deepest possible level. And so we have this issue where we don't even see mental illness as something to have compassion for. That if you have mental illness and you're not working to fix it because you can't, because you're mentally ill, then that's your own problem and you deserve whatever comes your way because of it. And yes, we have a personal responsibility, but again, we got to weigh that. We have to weigh if somebody is solely responsible for every single thing in their life, or if there's some nuance there. And there are things that we are responsible as humans after we get the help and the resources that we need in order to even take that responsibility. In America, we have these privatized prisons. We have such a large population of prisoners compared to the population of people, compared to the prison populations all across the world. And we love to just lock people up and put them in jail. And rehabilitation to a lot of Americans feels wrong. It feels like it's not enough of a punishment, that you're being too kind to people that deserve to be punished. And so when progressives talk about ending mass incarceration or funding mental health support, many conservatives just hear that you want to reward bad people. You're rewarding their sins. Don't reward them, punish them, and they won't do it again. Because our justice system is not justice. It's not built on psychology and human nature. It's not built on science and data about how humans operate and why they do the things that they do. And it's not based on what actually reduces crime. And once you're in this system, it is very difficult to get out of the system. And a lot of people reoffend because they don't really have many other options, because of the system that is in place that has put them in such a predicament that they can't pull themselves up after being locked up. And so a lot of progressives will, propose the idea that maybe we need to support people, lift people up, and rehabilitate them rather than just sending them to a tiny jail cell with as little as possible. They say that, and Republicans scoff, and they can't believe that we would treat criminals in such a way. But the difference is that progressives don't see people as inherent criminals. They see people as needing more support. And punishment culture is not the only Christian idea that is shaping our politics, because if you believe that suffering is deserved, then wealth must also be deserved. What you work for is what you get. And that brings me to the next layer of Christian influence, which is the prosperity gospel. And this idea that God will reward you with wealth and prosperity if you are loyal to Him, which sounds very similar to a certain orange president that we have in office right now. But this is why America loves blaming the poor. America hates the poor. They love the wealthy. Overall, they worship billionaires and corporate CEOs. They think that they worked hard and earned what they have and that they deserve it. And they also believe that those who have nothing have not worked, have not earned it, and they deserve nothing. This is, I think, one of the most influential Christian ideas in our politics. And it's interesting because I grew up with the prosperity gospel, but I didn't realize it. And it's really something that you would think would only be reserved for like televangelists. But there are definitely levels of the prosperity gospel. You know, you have the televangelists who are multimillionaires who are getting people to just send them so much cash. If you send me cash, then you'll be wealthy too. God will reward you. And those are just a scam. But growing up, we were not taught that being wealthy was a good thing. We were very much taught that you should not aim for wealth and prosperity, that you should aim to please God, even if you're poor. But at the same time, we were definitely taught that whenever you succeeded and you got the job and you made the money and you got the bonus, that was something to thank God for, that God blessed you. God rewarded you for being a loyal servant to Him. And so I think there are varying degrees of the prosperity gospel, but it is still there in the church because nobody in the church ever really gets upset with God for getting money, for becoming rich, or succeeding in life financially. People don't blame God for that. They thank God for that because God blessed them, and that is the prosperity gospel. And so if you're struggling or suffering or you're stuck in poverty, it is usually just framed as a test, or maybe you lack faith. Maybe if you just had a little more faith, God would give you a boost. Maybe it's the consequences of your sin, or it's just the result of your personal failure. But regardless, it's your fault. It's your problem, and you have to clean up the mess. You've got to claw your way out of poverty. It is not because somebody else did it to you. It's not because you are working a low wage job where your health insurance sucks and it doesn't cover anything, and you still have to pay out of pocket, and you still get denied claims while the insurance CEO makes 20 million a year denying your claims, and your CEO brings in millions and millions of dollars and takes the profits from your labor, buying himself all kinds of extravagant things that you'll never be able to buy in your life, and then uses the rest of their profits to lobby your government so that they don't have to pay you more, so that they don't have to give you better working conditions, and can continue to work you as hard as they want, exploiting your labor and paying you as little as possible. And I think there's definitely a disconnect between what Republicans say in their politics, how they kind of worship rich people and billionaires, thinking that they earned everything they have. There's a disconnect between that and what they say at the end of the day when they go home. Because I know that they get tired, they get exhausted, they haven't had any time off, they're working overtime, they're barely making enough to pay their bills, and they come home and they talk about how the boss just gets to make all of the money and work so little, and that he works so much harder than his boss does, and he's so sick of it and he just wants a raise. But then we'll turn around when it comes to a political conversation on Facebook and talk about how billionaires earned what they have, and maybe if you want to make more money, you need to work for it. So there's definitely a disconnect there in how they feel and what they say. And if you believe that wealth comes from virtue and being good and earning it, then you, again, are going to believe that poverty is coming from the opposite. And so you're going to think that poor people are just irresponsible. They must have made bad choices. They didn't work hard enough. They didn't follow the rules. They deserve the consequences, and helping them is just going to reward them for being so lazy. Once you believe that poverty is a moral failure, then Every single safety net proposed is going to look like an unfair reward. It's going to look like somebody's trying to steal from you, the hard worker who has good ethics and morality. They're stealing from you to give the people that don't have good ethics, don't have morality, and aren't hard workers a handout. And so that's why conservatives will instinctively say that people will just take advantage if you give them a little bit, that welfare makes people lazy, that maybe they just need some tough love. You'll hear it all the time. My tax dollars shouldn't pay for someone else's mistakes. Why should my tax dollars go so that other people can have free stuff? It's an easy talking point, but it disregards the very real complexity of these systems that we live in and how they impact individuals, communities, and our society as a whole, and how those at the top, the wealthiest, are intentionally keeping us oppressed, intentionally staying far above us, and then feeding us this narrative that our inability to climb the ladder like they did, which most of them probably were just born into wealth or got lucky, they can just scoff at us, and we can scoff at one another, and we can kind of adopt this belief that they feed us that if we aren't like them, then that is our own fault, not the fault of them who are actively working, lobbying to keep it that way. And progressives just don't see poverty as a moral failure. They see it as a systemic failure, looking at wages and housing costs and healthcare costs and generational poverty and discrimination and trauma and mental health and child development and infrastructure. The list goes on. All of these things can contribute to who we are, how we behave, who we become, and what opportunities we have and don't have. The prosperity gospel explains so much about our political behavior, our hostility toward the poor, our resistance to social programs, moralizing economic inequality, blaming people for conditions they didn't choose. People think that they're talking about economics, but really what they're talking about, again, is theology.